Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. The general picture here, Joseph Hooker, life dates 1814 to 1879, known to you students of the Civil War as Fighting Joe, had something of a roller coaster bumpy ride during his military career. A graduate of the West Point class of 1837 who made his mark during the Mexican War. He furthered his reputation as Fighting Joe during the Civil War at the Peninsula Campaign and notably Antietam before succeeding to the command of the Army of the Potomac. To the Great Eastern Army, he expanded on the idea of the Corps badge, those patches worn on caps and coats featuring diamonds, circles, trefoils, and other shapes. He lost the Battle of Chancellorsville and resigned near the climax of General Robert E. Lee's second Northern invasion that ended at Gettysburg. Just months later at Chattanooga, Hooker's Corps won the Battle of Lookout Mountain, also known as the Battle Above the Clouds. The next day, Hooker's men and the rest of the Union Army routed the Confederates, commanded by Braxton Bragg, at the Battle of Missionary Ridge, ending the siege like conditions at Chattanooga and opening the way to Atlanta and the heart of Georgia. Hooker had, like many officers, supporters, and detractors. One of those detractors was a fellow West Pointer, Brigadier General John Gibbon, life dates 1827 to 1896, a younger man than Hooker, a career soldier who distinguished himself on many a battlefield, notably Gettysburg, where he and his men took the brunt of Pickett's charge. In Gibbon's personal recollections of the Civil War, he did not hold back his opinions and offered a candid assessment of Hooker's character. I want to share the passage with you. Gibbon wrote, Hooker was a strange composition. Almost my first acquaintance with him was on the field of Bull Run, where his cool, gallant bearing was very much marked. After he was placed in command of the First Corps as McDowell's successor, I was thrown a good deal in contact with him. His apparent frank manner and agreeable address attracted everybody who approached him, and his coolness and nerve at Antietam gained him a great deal of additional renown. In private, he was in the habit of talking very freely and did not hesitate to criticize not only his brother officers, but his commander. He, like General Kearney, always thought that full credit was not given him for his fighting qualities. Neither of these two fine officers liked McClellan. In fact, I don't think Hooker ever liked a man under whom he was serving. Yet Hooker's conduct at Antietam was so satisfactory that McClellan asked to have him made brigadier general in the regular army, and his request was complied with, but it is doubtful if this effort to reward him would have been accomplished without the aid of Hooker himself and his political friends. He, having remained in or near Washington while was suffering from his wound, a great deal of his attractive frankness was assumed, and he was essentially an intriguer. In his intrigues, he sacrificed his soldierly principles whenever such sacrifice could gain him the political influence to further his own ends. I became painfully conscious of this in an interview I had with him a short time previous to the Battle of Fredericksburg. After the Battle of Antietam, one of my colonels who had not been with the regiment there went to Washington, where he succeeded, as I supposed, by purely political influence in getting himself appointed a brigadier general of volunteers, a position he was in no way fitted to fill. I felt outraged at this way of making military promotions, especially when I was told that this appointment was made for distinguished services in the Battle of Antietam, where the lieutenant colonel of this regiment was killed commanding the regiment. I had at least two colonels in the brigade who had richly won promotion, I afterwards learned, however, that the appointment referred to had been made on the special recommendation of General Hooker. This I could not understand, for in the first place, I knew General Hooker could not have known anything of the colonel's military history, and even if he had, could not have found in it anything to justify a recommendation from such a soldier as I believed Hooker to be for promotion. The matter, however, would probably never have been touched upon by me but for a piece of information which reached me early in December, whilst lying at Brooks Station. This was that the brigadier general referred to had returned to the army with a strong letter from a prominent politician requesting that he be placed in command of my old brigade. At that time, the brigade was under the command of one of the colonels I had recommended for promotion, and now, on the very eve of battle, to relieve a competent colonel and put that fine body of men in charge of an incompetent brigadier general was a step which excited not only my indignation, but my apprehensions. I appealed to the commander of the Grand Division not to permit it to be done, but he simply replied that the Army commander had requested that it should be done, and that in such a case, a request was equivalent to an order. In despair, I rode several miles to General Hooker's headquarters and was received by him in his usual candid, pleasant manner. I laid the case before him, frankly telling him why I did not want this brigadier general to have command of my old brigade, the character of the troops composing which he well knew, and ended by requesting him to apply for the officer for duty in his grand division, where he could assign him to a position where he could, at least, do as little harm as possible. To this he objected, and yet evidently had no better opinion of the officer than I had. I taxed him with recommending him for promotion. He looked confused, but admitted it. Then I pushed the question and asked him on what grounds he based his recommendation. He said he always noticed he had such a fine regiment and took such good care of it. This last I ridiculed and told him very plainly he had nothing to base his recommendation on. Finally, in a moment of frankness, he admitted that the officer had so many strong friends that he could not resist their solicitations. I now insisted that as he was responsible for the creation of an incompetent officer, he ought in justice to apply for and keep him in his command. This he positively declined to do, and we parted in no very good humor with each other. I never afterward had the same opinion of Hooker's soldierly qualities, and it was an open secret that he was intriguing for the command of the army long before he got it. The next time I met him was when I reported to him for duty in his army towards the end of March 1863. He received me as kindly as usual and promised to assign me to command in a few days. It was for a time uncertain where I was to go. My former division had been assigned to General John C. Robinson. I paid a visit to General John Sedgwick, now commanding the 6th Corps, and was very much gratified at his expressing a desire to have me assigned to duty in his command. He promised to see General Hooker about it the next day, but in a few days, General Howard was assigned to the command of the 11th Corps, and I was assigned to his old division, the 2nd Division of the 2nd Corps. And on the 1st of April, I reported to General Couch, commanding the Corps, and took command of the division, the headquarters of which were on a hill behind Falmouth, overlooking the whole surrounding country. So there you have the opinions, the candid assessment of John Gibbon of Fighting Joe Hooker. As you can tell, 160 years after the Civil War and more than 100 years after publication of the book of the personal recollections of Gibbon, the feelings are still strong against Hooker. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.